Hello and welcome into episode 12 of the Fourth and Whinges podcast with Mark and Rob. Afternoon, evening, Rob.
Good afternoon, evening, Mark. It's been a while. I've just looked. 23rd of September was the last time we did this. So
yes, we've. I'd like to say something really exciting or something has been going on, but I don't know about you, but nothing really exciting is happening for me.
Just life.
Yeah, exactly. Life just kind of got in the way, hasn't it? And we've just been struggling to find some time to kind of do this when it's fit us both in. So we're back. We're going to try and make a concerted effort to keep with it as best we can moving forward. But we'll see what happens. Previously, we were trying to have sort of a set format, weren't we, in kind of reviewing last week's games and previewing games coming up, things like that. But obviously, we've not done anything since week 2. So we're going to do it slightly differently today. And we're going to have a bit of a kind of a season recap, if you like. Now we're sat here at the end of week 10 and have a bit of a chat around the season so far. Good surprises, the things that have been good, bad, indifferent, whatever that may be, and just have a general kind of chat, really. Then we're going to move on and just have a reset of our power rankings at this point, kind of compare to what we said at the beginning of the season, see what that looks like. And then also we'll just kind of revisit the early season predictions and see how wrong we were from just a mere 10 weeks ago. And that'll probably do it for today, unless we might come up with a whinge of the week at the end. I think Rob might have one brewing there to talk about potentially.
I have one burning one.
So that's what we're going to do today. So let's get started, I guess. The season so far. What are your thoughts? What are your initial thoughts, or on what you've seen through 10 weeks?
I mean, any given Sunday, really. How I know it's unpredictable at the best of times, but there's just been some crazy results week to week, but some teams that we didn't think could do so well that are right up there. So, Arizona Cardinals, I think, have been incredible. There have been some teams that we thought would do a lot better that were, sort of way lower down in the rankings. It's, you've got the Jags beating the Bills the other week, 9-6 in a sort of replay of the 2017 wildcard game. Washington beating Tampa Bay last week. There's been so many shocks and upsets. I think that's been my main takeaway from this season is it's just the NFL is as unpredictable as ever. Miami beating Baltimore last week. I thoroughly expect the Falcons to absolutely crush the Patriots this evening. It's just you cannot get a read. All of my accumulators have gone wrong. I don't think I've won any money off any accumulators based on the NFL this year. But it's great. It's what we want. If you look at, I think in the NFC, 15 of the 16 teams can still make the playoffs, obviously with the exception of the Detroit Lions. I think that's right. And it just shows how tight everything is, really. There's going to be some big teams that miss the playoffs. It's fascinating. I honestly can't predict where it's going to go week to week. And that is reflected in the performance of my fantasy team this season, I think. For me, I think in the past few years, I think it's safe to say that the strength of the NFL has been in the AFC, and I think the majority of the really good teams have been on the AFC side. But I think you're starting to maybe see that move over to the NFC, certainly in terms of the more consistently good teams. That's been my kind of biggest takeaway, I think. And I think that's what that's done to the AFC is it's made it a lot more interesting in that, I genuinely couldn't, I have no idea who's going to come out of the AFC, to get to the Super Bowl at this stage. It's crazy. And part of that obviously is because the Kansas City Chiefs have regressed quite a bit on offense, and I think what that's done is it's brought them back to the pack, if you like. And then you see teams, like you said, who we wouldn't necessarily be have expected to be doing as well, like Tennessee leading the AFC, number 1 ranked team. Probably they're not far away now from getting that number 1 seed locked up because they have a few of the wild cards. wild cards, a few of the what's the word I'm looking for? Tiebreakers. Having because of some of the teams that they've beat. So it's really interesting. Cincinnati looked really good for a point until they kind of seem to have dropped off a cliff the last couple of weeks. It's crazy.
I got Mike Whited.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's been crazy, like you say. And on the betting front, yeah, I'm with you 100%. The first couple of weeks, I made a tiny bit of money, and since then, I've made absolutely nothing. Despite a wide variety of types of bets, I thought I'm giving up on the results here because I can't predict a result. So I started doing handicap results and overs and unders and all this, and I've no money. Yeah. It's been pretty crazy. But I think personally, I would certainly prefer it this way than it being 2 or 3 teams
absolutely
that kind of run away with it. It's not really the way the NFL works, is it at all? But what are your kind of thoughts on Arizona? Because I think both of us coming into the season were like, Cliff Kingsbury's on his last legs. Arizona have not impressed, blah, blah, blah. And then obviously they were the last unbeaten team, I think, weren't they? And until Kyler got injured, they were looking really good.
Yeah, I mean, incredibly impressed there. 8-2. As you said, Kyler's been injured, but I think we're finally seeing that sort of maybe that air raid offense that Kingsbury wanted to implement when he was coming out of college. They've got, I think James Conner has been incredible for this season. I think he's the NFL touchdown leader. I think he's got 11. You've got Chase Edmonds, who's been a good fall for him in the backfield as well. So you've got their running, you've got Kyler's running ability. I think bringing in AJ Green while he's missed a couple of games and not necessarily been huge for them. I just think he's another big-bodied target. Takes a bit of the pressure off Nuke Hopkins as well to sort of take that away a little bit and just gives them a different option. Defensively, I think they've been very good. What were they? Yeah, they were 7-0, weren't they? And they're now 8-2. But within that time, they've been able to. They've had the luxury kind of sitting Kyler and of sitting Murray as well. So previously, they'd have last year certainly they kept Murray out on the field when he wasn't 100% fit. They ended up starting Chris Streveler at one point, which didn't go incredibly well for them. But they're doing the right thing. It's prudent to keep Murray and Hopkins out. If they're not right this week, I would keep them out again. They've built up that cushion now that's enabled them to do that. So very, very impressed. I know Sunday they lost 34-10 to the Panthers, which wasn't great, but they were starting Colt McCoy, so I think we can forgive them that. Yeah,
I was quite surprised that they got, like I said, beaten by as much as they did, which potentially is a worrying sign for them. But certainly they've been really impressive so far. I say for Tennessee, for me, I'm not as positive about that. I said look right to me. It doesn't seem like it's a genuinely good team, if you see what I mean. When I watch them, I'm thinking, how are they beating all these teams? Because offensively, they've been quite poor, especially since Henry got injured, of course. And I just don't know how they're going to go on and beat some of the good teams now with no running game. Defensively, they're quite good, and they do still look strong. But I'd fancy the chances of the Chiefs playing them at this point. If I'm being honest, I wouldn't be scared of them too much in the playoffs. So I'm not convinced they're for real necessarily. But I think he's done a really good job.
Definitely.
The coach and I think I have been impressed with them to date. What about some people that have kind of not been what you've expected? I know for me there's two that stand out really.
So I'll let you handle the Chiefs if you wanted to. I think probably Washington for me. I know you and I were sort of quite excited about them. They're fortunate with Fitzpatrick's injury. I think he would have been a definite upgrade on Taylor Heineke for them, and it sounds like he's still not going to return this season at all. Fitzpatrick, I think they did have an MRI last week, and he's still on crutches. I think specifically their defense, though, if we look at that, they were one of the best defenses in the NFL last season, and I think they're 29th or something this season. Chase Young's torn his ACL. He's out now, but prior to that, he'd done very, very little. Montez Sweat hasn't been as dominant again at all. And I think that's what, we're hoping they'd have that strong defense to sort of keep them in games. And then on offense, you'd have Fitzpatrick, you'd have Antonio Gibson, you'd have Terry McLaurin. Curtis Samuel I thought was a good addition in the offseason. He's just been injured, which is kind of classic Curtis Samuel, really. But yeah, just with some of the moves they made, I always liked Ron Rivera. He seems to become, he's not really Riverboat Ron anymore. He used to just sort of roll the dice all the time. And he's gone back into his shell. No, I mean, the win against Tampa Bay the weekend was incredible. And hopefully that's a sign of things to come. But I think they've been one of my major disappointments.
Yeah, definitely share all of those thoughts. I think at the beginning of the season, I was there predicting Montez Sweat for Defensive Player of the Year, wasn't I? On the basis that Chase Young was going to get all the attention and how good he was going to free Sweat up, and it just hasn't materialised on that side of the ball at all. And then obviously losing Fitzpatrick early, up until this last week, Heineke's looked like he doesn't belong at this level, and so they've really, really struggled. So yeah, they've been a massive letdown. Another one for me until last week was the 49ers. They're two seasons removed from a Super Bowl loss to the Chiefs, and yes, the Chiefs. We can get onto them briefly in a second, but they've regressed a little bit this year. But the 49ers, are really struggling for some reason, and I don't quite get it. Last year, obviously, they seemed to be riddled with injuries, and and they've had a little bit of that this year, but not in the same degree, and not to the point where they should be. Losing some of the games that they've lost this season, and they've looked poor at times, I think. So they've really surprised me, but obviously they're one of the best teams in the league in the Rams last week. So it just shows that you just don't know week to week, do you? It's such a week to week league. It's kind of crazy. But yeah, no, I'm interested in your. Again, I have my own opinions, being a fan, but what are your thoughts so far, and what how do you feel?
Was that on the Chiefs? It just briefly cut out for me there. Yeah. I think I'm probably higher on the Chiefs than you are at this point. I think I was higher on earlier in the season when they were messing up. I always had faith that they would figure it out, and they've had some very bad games. They've had some poor luck, but I think as we've sort of had discussions of, I'd said some of the interceptions have bounced off people's helmets or they got off people's hands, and they'd had a lot of interceptions like that. But totally taking your point that Mahomes is throwing off target, and he's kind of created some of those as well for himself. I think he's felt under pressure to try and do too much. There's a couple of times I've seen him throw no look passes, and it's been intercepted or it's gone nowhere. Like, what are you doing? Just go back to what you know. You don't have to make a splash play. You don't have to run it all the time. I think they've been put under pressure because of their defensively been very poor. Desperate Dan has been absolutely desperate at times. They say not to pick on him, but I clearly just have. I think weirdly or perversely, the offensive line has probably been one of your strengths. You see, Creed Humphrey, I think, was a fantastic pick at centre. I think it was either in the third round. Did you take him, third or fourth?
Third or fourth. I think. Yeah,
he's been fantastic. I think offensive line play has been fine. It's I don't know. It's honestly a bit of a strange one, and it reminds me of Super Bowl winning season. I think you were 7-3 or something after 10 weeks, but Mahomes had been injured. Matt Moore had come in and started a few games, and then Mahomes came back, and you figured it out. And I absolutely think you'll figure it out again. I mean, 41-17 against the Raiders. All right, they've had a lot of issues, but they've been a good team. Their pass rush has been good. They've been playing well offensively, and to shut them down like that and beat up on them almost. I think Mahomes had 35 completions on 50 attempts for 406 yards, 5 touchdowns, no turnovers, and you just wore them into the ground. Tyreek Hill, he was sort of doing a lot of sort of shorter yardage ones to Tyreek Hill, getting him open. Travis Kelce had a great game. I think what you called out in the off-season as well about lacking a solid number 2 is definitely still there. But I just believe that you'll figure out. And also Nick Bolton, I think, has been quite good for you. But your linebacker usage confuses the hell out of me. Nobody seems to play more than about 50% of the snaps. So you keep running out. It's called Niederman. Is it that you pronounce it? I forget what his name.
Ben Niemann, I think it is.
Niemann, not
Ben
Niemann.
Yeah.
Niemann. Willie Gay, I think probably that's okay when he's been on the pitch, but just probably playing about a third of the snaps. Nick Bolton, it's all a bit confused.
What it is with the linebackers, I think, is I don't think we've got anybody that's kind of got the all-round skill to play that position. So I think you've got people. None of them are particularly good in coverage. So I think because of that, they kind of rotate them around and use that's why Sorensen plays quite a bit more than probably he should do because they kind of bring him down to play a bit of linebacker because he's obviously a safety, so he's got that better coverage skill in theory. So I think that's probably where the rotation thing comes from with the linebackers. But yeah, I'd like to see them look to try and stick more to Bolton and Willie Gay because those are the 2 young players that in theory have got room to grow. And I'm not a big fan of Hitchens and Ben Niemann is neither here nor there. He probably shouldn't even be an NFL player. So I think Willie Gay and Bolton are definitely the players that should be playing. I share a lot of your thoughts. Really, I think I wasn't as impressed with the Raiders win as others. I think some people have been quick to jump on the bandwagon and say, right, they're back. We're back, no problem, on we go. But I think it was a good game for Mahomes in the sense of he got lucky on a few throws. He could quite easily have turned the ball over twice.
But that's kind of Mahomes, isn't it? Not that he's a turnover, but he makes some.
You kind of got to
he's got those big plays, hasn't he? In this,
you've got to kind of take. But all I'm saying is that I don't think that one game, because I've listened to a lot of podcasts, as you know, and one of them that I listen to is a Chiefs-based podcast, and they were basically saying on the back of the Green Bay game, that final pass, probably his best pass of the season, to get that first down, to ice the game against Green Bay, to Tyreek Hill. And it's like Mahomes to Hill, he's back. That'll be the one throw. We'll kick into gear against the Raiders and everything will be sweet and fantastic. And then obviously we go on to kind of beat them quite heavily. And so that's the narrative that everybody's jumped on. And I'm not convinced it's quite there. And I think this weekend's going to be a massive test. It would not surprise me if we smashed the Cowboys, and it wouldn't surprise me if they smashed us. What I'm not expecting is a close game. I think it will go one way or the other. So we'll see how that kind of works. But what about the Jags? If you want to speak of them, do you want to speak about the Jags?
I mean, yeah, I'm fine speaking about the Jags. They're not particularly interesting. That's the only problem. I've been encouraged the past few weeks. So obviously the defense has started playing lights out. I thoroughly enjoyed Josh Allen sacking Josh Allen and Josh Allen getting an interception off Josh Allen and Josh Allen recovering a Josh Allen fumble.
So
it was amazing.
It was you that was blowing up the internet that day then. Everything I read was Josh Allen.
Yeah, it was amazing. Absolutely incredible. So defensively we've started playing better. It's deeply, deeply concerning that our WR1 is a punt returner that up until this season had never played wide receiver and played a few snaps at running back. To be fair to Jamal Agnew, when he's got hold of the ball, he's been incredible. But at the weekend, there was so many drops. I thought Lawrence probably had his best game of the season at the weekend. Most of his throws were on point. He was, he was active, he was moving in the pocket, he was making the right decisions, but there was so many, Jones was dropping it. Chenault has been a absolute non-factor this season. Obviously, DJ Chark went down early doors, so he's had very little assistance. We're paying Cam Robinson on the franchise tag. I mean, I understand why we did it because we had the salary cap space and there wasn't a lot of help at at tackle and things. But dear God, we need to be looking for help in the draft next. So I'm encouraged. I don't think we're ever going to be amazing. What I do like is the team they're playing hard for Urban Meyer. They haven't quit on him at all, which was a concern. I think Meyer. I think the whole, the pictures of him in the bar and everything that we saw, and him having that, I think it's brought him down a rung or two. I think it's removed some of that arrogance and some of that smugness, and he's realised he's going to have to knuckle down. He's going to actually, he's not in the college game anymore. It's a whole different. It's another level. This. So yeah, I'm encouraged. I mean, I was at London for the Miami game, and that was incredible. That was just superb to get our first win of the season there and be behind those sticks as Matthew Wright kicked the game winner. I do think we made a mistake there, though. That was emotional. So we cut Josh Lambo after that game. And I think since then, Matthew Wright has proven that he's not an NFL kicker. It would have been incredibly harsh to cut him off that game. But Josh Lambo's been, a kicker in this league for a great number of years. He's been fantastic for us the past few seasons. He was great for the Chargers. So I think we'll regret that. But I'm fine with it. I think Lawrence is developing. The defense is getting better. We massively need help at wide receiver and probably on the O line, in the secondary as well. But yeah, it's kind of what I expected this season. To be fair, win 3 or 4 games, and I'm okay with it.
Yeah, and I think if the results had come in a slightly different order, and there hadn't been the stuff with Urban Meyer, I think the picture would probably be a little bit different. I think losing to Houston, losing to the Broncos, even possibly by as many as you did, 10 points. Some of the early season games didn't look good at all, did they? And I think the other thing is as well, everyone's kind of expecting when you drafted number 1, nobody ever learns. When you drafted number 1 over the overall, no matter who you are, you're not a good team. To just the team's not good, but also what I was more meaning is as a quarterback, yes, you drafted number 1 overall, but it's bloody hard to come into the NFL as a rookie, and no matter who you are, look at Peyton Manning. He's Hall of Famer. He's as good as there's ever been, and his first season was diabolical. So, he's going to have those things. So there's people saying, they made the wrong choice, all this nonsense. It's just stupid. He'll be fine. It's all about what you do in the off season and the draft and building on that, isn't it? You get however many wins you get, you'll be picking in the top 5, fine. Go on. Absolutely. And then it's what you do after that, isn't it? I think I was just looking briefly whilst you were talking of just from a statistical point of view, and the Dolphins game kind of stands out really from a PFF grading point of view as by far your kind of best team win of the season, just across the board, statistically wise, just grade wise.
It wasn't a good game.
No, I watched bits of it. I didn't watch it all. But that looks, but you can kind of see from then on, you can definitely see a bit of a change, and you're certainly playing better. So yeah, is there any other kind of teams you want to touch on, or anything else you want to kind of say about the season so far?
I think the one thing I would like to touch upon, and this is going to be a bit of an apology, I'm going to say, Jalen Hurts.
Good shout.
He looks. Certainly the past couple of weeks, earlier in the season, he had that great game in week 1, and then he came back down to earth a bit. But I think the Eagles and Nick Sirianni have finally started playing to his strengths.
Yeah.
So, Miles Sanders has gone out. They've started developing the run game. They're giving him some really good designed runs. But to be fair, he's looked good in the pocket. There was a play I saw on Twitter that Dan Orlovsky had called out. And he took a step back. He sent some pressure coming off his line, so he took another step back into the pocket, some pressure coming from behind him, he stepped forward, still progressing through all his reads, eyes were downfield, at no point did he look to escape and just become a runner, some pressure coming from his side, so he flicked the ball across to his other arm, off balance, he then made a cracking throw downfield to Dallas Goedert, I think he went for 25 yards and he hit the first down, and I can see progress in him week to week, and I just hope that the Eagles don't go in for a Matt Corral or a Kenny Pickett or even trade for Russell Wilson, because if you're going to give up 3 picks for Russell Wilson and Jalen Hurts, you've been absolutely had there. Build around Hurts, give him some help, and then he might not be right, but 2023 looks like it's going to be a better quarterback class, and go that route. Get the players in. You've got other holes on that roster. You get Russell Wilson in or Aaron Rodgers in or Deshaun Watson in, it's not just going to fix it instantly. I think you've got something you can work with there. So Jalen Hurts, I'm sorry. You've had a great season so far, so keep it going. I believe.
Yeah, I think that's a really good shout. I wasn't a big fan coming in really either. I think some of that was the fact that in college he started at Alabama and then looked good at times and then got beat out by Tua. I think it was in one of the national championships a few years ago when Jalen Hurts was playing, and then I think at halftime he got pulled and Tua went in and won the game for them, from what I remember. And then from then on it was Tua's team, and Hurts went and transferred to Oklahoma. Looked really good at Oklahoma, but in that Oklahoma offense that is predominantly run with the odd passes, basically what they're trying to turn the Eagles offense into.
Yeah.
So it did fit well with his strengths, but kind of trying to predict then what he was going to look like in the NFL, I was very skeptical, and he didn't look good last year. But as you say, I think that was because they were trying to play him as a drop back quarterback, and he's never going to be that. Yeah. I'm not saying they should be going full on like Baltimore Lamar Jackson offense, because he's not the same type of running quarterback. He's not as elusive or whatever. But there's a mixture to be had there, and like you say, they're kind of doing what they should be doing to kind of play to some of those strengths. So I am of the same boat. I think he's been much better than I thought, and I definitely would take those picks that they're going to get in this year and build around him. Whether that doesn't necessarily even need to be offensively, just build a team around him. That it could be defensively, you could, because they've looked poor at times defensively, so they need a lot of help there as well. But you're right, if they just go ahead and throw three first round picks and go and get a quarterback that they'll then have to pay shitloads of money to, you've got no draft, you've got no salary cap to do anything. Russell Wilson's not taking that team to the Super Bowl. I don't care how good you think he is. He can't even get Seattle there. Can't even get Seattle out of bottom place in their division, seemingly. So, it's. Yeah, so I think it's a good shout. We were all.
And I think if you look at Kyler Murray as well, you look at the first couple of seasons Kyler had in the in the league. He wasn't necessarily tearing it up, and I'm not. Again, he's not the same runner, and like you've just said, he's not the same runner as Lamar, but
bit closer. But
yeah, give him a chance.
Yeah, no, and I think that's a really key thing for some of the rookie quarterbacks, because that was the only other thing I was going to kind of touch on really. And I'll get to that maybe in the next episode when we kind of do something else that we're going to do a little feature. But I think people again are so quick to. We were all so high on this quarterback class. It's the best quarterback class since whatever. And people have then been quite quick to go, oh, well, maybe none of them are very good, and Mac Jones is the only good quarterback, and this, that, and the other. And it's like we're 10 games into a season. Lawrence will come good.
Exactly.
Even Wilson will come good. I truly believe that. Lance, maybe not. I was never high on him. We'll see there. But even the likes.
We've not really seen him, have we?
No, we haven't, to be fair. Even Fields, though, he started to look a bit better. It's starting to slow down for him. So I think, okay, so if that's kind of all we wanted to talk about there, we thought the next thing we'd do is take a look at sort of our preseason power rankings and see how they kind of stand up now and kind of revisit that really. So what I'll do, just for our purposes, is we can kind of talk about that. So just to start with, do you want to go first, Rob? You had in preseason your top five were Tampa Bay, Kansas City, Buffalo, LA Rams, and the Packers. Where have you kind of shifted from there?
Again, I have no idea what's going on from week to week, to be perfectly honest. But I think Green Bay are definitely up there. Matt LaFleur's done a great job. Apparently, at the moment, he's the greatest coach in NFL history just by numbers and winning percentage.
Really?
I think so, yeah. So I mean, I'd still have Green Bay in the top 5. I mean, you can make an argument that probably that top 5 is okay. I think all of them will be there or thereabouts come the end of the season. I think I would have to put Tennessee in there. I know you and I were talking, and I agree that they do have a bit of an asterisk next to them, but they keep winning and they keep performing, and they've built up that much of a cushion now that they're going to make the playoffs, and they may even get the 1 seed, as you've said.
Just a different way of looking at that, though. So if you had on a neutral field, so not a home, or if it was a neutral field like a Super Bowl, who's the favourite, Green Bay or Tennessee?
Green Bay.
Who's the favourite, Rams or Tennessee?
Oh, I like this. Rams. Yeah, I think I know where you're going with this.
Tampa Bay.
Tampa Bay. Dallas.
Buffalo.
Dallas. Yeah, definitely.
Ravens.
All right.
Do you know what I mean?
Okay. I do.
It's one thing sort of saying, I think the Titans are going to be the number 1 seed, but they're not. They're not at the top of my power rankings. They're not. Do you know what I mean? Because I just don't see how they. I don't understand some of their results, I think, is the way I'm thinking about it.
Oh, I totally agree.
I don't see that it's real. Whereas, I agree. In all of those things on a neutral field, they're not the favourites to any of those teams in my mind.
And that's kind of why. You don't know. But that's kind of why I'm okay with my top 5 being the way it is, because I think those teams probably are still some of the best teams in the NFL. Regardless of certain results, I would have Arizona up there, to be fair, and I tell you what, I would have the Patriots up there because they're rounding into form. And once you've got Bill Belichick getting a team into it would not shock me if the Patriots made the Super Bowl this year. I'm just kind of numb to it at this point, but I can absolutely see that happening.
It wouldn't shock me, but I think we've had a couple of years. 2 or 3 years now without the Patriots. Let's just go a couple.
Been nice, hasn't it? Yeah, it's been
it's been nice, and I think that's why we've had some parity these last few years. Let's just have another couple of years, and then they can come back.
Okay. No,
but so in terms of my preseason, then was I had Tampa Bay, Kansas City, same as you. Then I had Cleveland at 3, Baltimore at 4, and Green Bay at 5, same as you. So I was kind of higher on Cleveland and Baltimore versus Buffalo and the Rams.
Yeah,
I think Baltimore to me are the interesting one because they, like many others, have had a bad loss or 2 throughout the season, but they're one of the teams that scare me a little bit in terms of if the Chiefs have to play the Browns, I'm okay with that. Chiefs have to play the Patriots even at the minute. I'm okay with that. The Baltimore Ravens scare me a little bit, and it's because I think they seem like, again, they can win in a variety of different ways. Sometimes defensively they look really good. Marlon Humphrey's been playing really well this year. But I think they can win it on the ground for sure. Lamar can win it himself. He can also throw a game every now and again. But they've got various different ways to me that they can win a game, and that's kind of what scares me about them. So I think I'm probably a little bit higher on Baltimore than maybe some others. But I think potentially Dallas, I think are up there outside of that horrific loss to Denver. They've looked really, really good. They obviously ran Tampa Bay close at the beginning of the season. And outside of that Denver game, have looked good since. So I think they are there or thereabouts. The Rams as well. I wasn't high on them at the beginning of the season. I didn't trust Matt Stafford to be the answer, and I was kind of coming around to that. And then he's had a couple of bad games in a row now. So maybe is the real Matthew Stafford coming to the front?
I think poor little Bobby Trees is a big loss for them as well, isn't he?
Who's that? Sorry,
Bobby Trees, Robert Woods.
Oh my God! Oh, God. Hey, it's not only a loss for them, it's a loss for me. He's number 2 in fantasy, so
that was my first thought. Not poor Robert Woods. I was like, bloody hell, Marks.
Yeah, snookered.
I know.
Yeah. So in terms of,
I agree with that. I just don't like Baltimore, really. I'm a bit fed up of them. I don't know why. They've always kind of wound me up a little bit, so I usually kind of ding them a bit. But you're right, they're rounding into form and they've got everything figured out. Marquise Brown has had a great season as well. The passing game has developed a lot more, because they've been forced to. But equally, Devonta Freeman's come in and actually given them a bit of a different option. Latavius Murray, before he got injured, they just seem to have to plug players in, and they're clearly very well coached. And I agree with you, they would be a team that would scare me.
That's one of the keys, isn't it? I think, they're well coached, the system works, and they can kind of plug players into a degree and what have you. Yeah, I think Rashad Bateman as well is going to be a good player for them moving forward.
Yes, definitely.
Another really good wide receiver that hopefully once Lamar Jackson builds up a bit of a rapport there with him, then you'll see that open up Hollywood Brown a bit more, and again it'll make them a better team for sure. What about the bottom end of things then? So I'll go first this time. I had Detroit last, then Philadelphia, then Houston, then Las Vegas, and then Chicago. So I think it was kind of obvious to see that Houston and Detroit were going to be down there, so probably not much to say there. I think both of us were higher at the beginning of the year, expectation-wise, for the Jags. I think we'd probably both put them down there in the bottom 5 now.
Absolutely,
Washington, big disappointment. The Giants as well, big disappointment. They'd be down there. The Jets obviously have not been good at all. I thought they were starting to turn the corner, but then the last couple of games they've been... which I don't understand why they're so bad defensively. That's my biggest worry for them at the minute.
Especially given what Robert Saleh did in San Francisco as well.
Exactly. There's I think, but Philadelphia, I had them 31st ranked at the beginning of the season. Clearly they're better than that, and it's because of what we talked about before. It's because you've seen that improvement in Hurts, because defensively they've been poor. But he has played well. And he's kept them in games and he's won them games. So,
definitely. No, okay. I mean, mine was fairly similar. I had the Giants down there to begin. I had the Giants at 29 at the start of the season. I had Houston 32, Detroit 31, Philadelphia 30. I was slightly higher. Philadelphia, not much. Giants 29 and the Falcons 28. I think now you've got to have the Jags in there, Washington in there, Jets in there. Miami are on the cusp of the bottom 5 for me as well. They've been poor. I know they beat Baltimore last time out, but you don't know what you're getting with them either. And I think Brian Flores might potentially be in a little bit of trouble, just knowing ownership there and everything. So,
Okay, cool. The other thing we were going to talk about then is at the beginning of the season, we made some kind of predictions looking forward at some of the awards that they hand out. So MVP, offensive, defensive rookie, etc., etc. Again, thought it'd be interesting just to take a look at how wrong we were here, because this is to be fair, this is a difficult challenge. You've got thousands of players to pick from, and if we can't even get the teams in the right order, how on earth are we supposed to do it with the players? But so MVP at the beginning of the season, you went for Josh Allen. I went for Patrick Mahomes.
Perfectly reasonable.
Perfectly reasonable assumptions at the beginning of the season. Thoughts on MVP now?
Honestly, I don't think there's a clear front runner. I looked at the betting the other day, and Josh Allen is heavily favoured. I have no idea why.
No,
I genuinely don't.
No.
There definitely isn't a front runner. I mean, Dak maybe. Dak's got to be up there. Tom Brady has got to be up there. Given the season, I know he threw for 2, 3. One got called back on one of the interceptions got called back last week. But he's had an amazing season. There isn't a clear front runner. Cooper Kupp.
Yeah, no, it's
going to be a quarterback.
Well, I was just about to say, historically, we know it's a quarterback award, isn't it? So it will get given to a quarterback, I think. But I agree that right now, if I had to pick a front runner, I would say it's Cooper Kupp. I really would, because nobody would have said he was going to lead the league in touchdowns at the beginning of the season. I don't think nobody outside maybe a Rams fan. He's looked really good. And like you say, the quarterbacks, they're all just a bit up and down. I tell you who's somebody, though, who I don't necessarily rate myself, and his team isn't doing particularly well, but statistically, he's played very, very well this year. And I'm not saying he's going to win MVP, but I think I just want to shout out to him. It's Kirk Cousins. I think if you look at, again, I'm big on PFF and their kind of grades and stuff. He is through 10 weeks of the season, he is their highest graded quarterback from a passing point of view, which I would never have guessed. I would never have guessed in a million years if you'd have just asked me, before I kind of checked that out. You've got Cousins at 1, Kyler Murray at 2, Brady at 3, Dak Prescott at 4, Ryan Tannehill at 5. Brady,
he's only thrown 3 interceptions, has he? I think he's not
Cousins
thrown many.
just 2.
Yeah, 2. Right, okay.
18 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. So he's graded really well from a passing point of view, and but then you look at the Minnesota, and I don't know if you've watched a lot of Minnesota games, but I watch the games and think this offense is awful, and yet
not working. Yeah,
he's grading so well, and I think what it is that what they're doing is they're saying, just make that short pass there, just dump it off there, then make one big throw down there. He's making a couple of good throws a game or whatever. He's not being asked to do too much, and he's kind of managing that. And then they don't necessarily have the complementary football around him to then kind of win games. But if you just maybe released him to do a bit more, if he was in an offense more like a Chiefs offense or a Cowboys offense, I think he could potentially, be looking a lot better and kind of be in that conversation. But just somebody, I thought it was interesting when I kind of looked at that, and he's kind of, I think he's up there in yards as well. I think he's 9th in terms of yards as well. So he's up there in kind of all the stats, playing really well. Yet his team's really not. What about Coach of the Year? Initially, you were quite high on the Rams. You had Sean McVay as your kind of tip at the beginning. I couldn't have been further from reality. I was heavily in on the Jets, thinking they were gonna do well. And when you have a team that kind of looks poor in one season and even gets, not middle of the pack, they stand a good chance. That was my reasoning for picking Robert Saleh. But obviously, I've been way off the mark there. They've been really poor. But what are your sort of thoughts at this point?
I think I probably lean to Cliff Kingsbury, to be fair.
Yeah.
Based on just what we discussed earlier in the pod, I think he stepped up. I think we all thought he was going to be on the hot seat. I won't go over what we said earlier, but 8-2. Your record doesn't lie. They've looked really good. As we said, they've had the injuries, so it's him. I was trying to think of others. Mike Vrabel, I think, deserves a lot of credit. I know we've covered the Titans again in quite a bit of detail, but they're clearly very well coached. They've got that great record at the moment. They've lost Derrick Henry. Julio Jones hasn't played for them, but Marcus Johnston even came in last week and stepped up and played for them. Jeffrey Simmons, I think, has been fantastic for them on the D line. They're just a very well coached, well drilled team. I think I skew towards Cliff Kingsbury because it's a bit more exciting offensively, a bit more, more exciting to watch. I think more sustainable, as we've discussed. So probably for me, Cliff Kingsbury at the moment.
Yeah, I think definitely Vrabel because of his results and their record. Again, I don't know how he's doing it. I don't know how his team is winning the games. As I said before, I think Julio. I didn't like
the trade at the time. I think I said that on one of the podcasts potentially, that I think, for me, Julio's on the downturn and he's just been so injured, and it's continued this year. So, he's essentially had one wide receiver, and he's got no running back now. His tight ends aren't particularly good. And offense, to be fair, on offense, they've not looked great in recent weeks, but they're still winning. They still have all the tiebreakers, as we said. So definitely needs a shout. But also, I think for the turnaround in record, and also just the fact that I do think they will continue winning, I think Mike McCarthy's got a really good shout at the Cowboys. I think if you take America's team and get them into the playoffs, win a couple of playoff games, I think you've got a massive shout. So I think he's up there for me at the moment.
Absolutely. They've been incredible this season. Defense has turned around. Offensively, they look very good. A couple of games aside, but every team's had that. I do think though that I agree with you. He definitely deserves a shout, but I could also see them firing him at the end of the season. I just think if a team comes in for Kellen Moore and they want to keep Kellen Moore in the building, I can see Jerry doing the Jerry thing. Go, we've got to the playoffs. If they're one and done in the playoffs, and somebody comes in for Kellen Moore and they want to keep him, I can see him going.
Getting rid of him and promoting Kellen Moore to keep him.
Because that's just what they do, and that would be incredibly harsh. I mean, they've discussed this in quite some depth on the Around the NFL podcast as well, and I'm with them. I think McCarthy's done a great job, but I don't think that matters.
It wouldn't exactly be crazy behaviour for Jerry Jones. It would be crazy
for anybody else.
Yeah. No, I agree. I genuinely hadn't heard about that, or I hadn't given that any thought. But can you imagine? He wins. Coach of the year, and then they sack him.
It'd be so Dallas, though. I would very much enjoy it.
We won't necessarily go through all of these if this time, but there's one that I did want to call out because I think you kind of nailed it for me, and that's defensive rookie of the year. The beginning of the year, to be fair, I don't think I was wild in my prediction. I picked Kwity Paye, the edge player at Indianapolis, but you picked Micah Parsons, and on the Dallas theme, he's looked very good.
He's looked incredible, hasn't he? Definitely sticking with that one. Heavy favourite. He's played at linebacker. He's played at defensive end when DeMarcus Lawrence got injured, and he's an absolute machine.
Yeah. I was concerned about his kind of his character. I saw the games I saw. I thought the talent was always there, but my concern with him was his character. I thought he came across very immature. There were rumours of him being very immature, and that potentially being an issue. And I just thought, going to Dallas, where I don't really see where the leaders are on that team necessarily, outside of Dak maybe and Zeke. Certainly defensively, I don't see where the leaders are. And I worried with the likes of Randy Gregory not, being a bit kind of crazy and having all of his troubles, that I worried that wasn't going to work in Dallas. But the talent has shone through. I didn't think he particularly came. For me, he didn't come across great in
Hard Knocks.
In Hard Knocks. Some people liked him. I didn't. Again, I thought he was a little bit childish, and he didn't look great for me at that point. But you can't deny the talent. He's looked really good. He would be a fantastic addition to the Chiefs. Talking about the linebacker problems that we've got at the moment, he'd be a huge player for somebody like us. But he's looked really good, and I think he's up there in terms of the favourite for sure. For rookie defensive player of the year. How about rookie offensive player of the year? What do you think?
It's a funny one, isn't it? Because it depends if you go rookie of the year, as in like rookie MVP, and then rookie offensive player. So it's a tricky one, isn't it?
Roll it into one, because that's generally isn't it? It's offensive player wins the rookie of the year. So what do you think?
I mean, it should be Jamar Chase, really. I think he's been incredible. Obviously, in the preseason, was all the stuff about all his drops and blah blah blah, and all the memes about Penai Sewell blocking people and then throwing to any old wide receiver. But nobody's laughing now. I know it's been a bit quieter sort of the past couple of weeks, but he's had a great season. He's got to be favourite. I think the other one I'd like to give some props to is just Najee Harris. He's running behind a very poor offensive line. He's got a terrible quarterback, and he's right up there in yards. He's right up there in touchdowns.
So yeah, that's an interesting one for me, Harris. I have not been as high on him at all. I know he's got a lot of yards.
He's been fed the ball, hasn't he? So they've just given him it. Yeah, I know what you mean.
When you look at his statistics from of the yards per carry and that type of thing. But I mean, running backs are a product of their offensive line to a degree, unless you call Derrick Henry. So you can't necessarily lay all that on him. But and he is a good player, and I expect that he will be a good player moving forward. But I haven't been as impressed with him as maybe some of the other running backs that were taken a lot lower than him. And again, it comes back to the adage of shouldn't be taking running backs in round one, that kind of thing. And I think because of my thoughts on that, maybe that's a bit of a prejudice to can't get over. Just like Ramondre Stevenson has looked really good.
He has.
Now, he's playing on a team with a better offensive line, so maybe that's the thing. But even Javonte Williams, I think, again, why he's still in a 50-50 split.
It's crazy, isn't it? Crazy.
Well,
you and I were both a lot higher on. You and I both had Javonte Williams as our top rusher, didn't we, pre-season? I just think, Harris probably does it. I've just pulled up the stats. So he does 176 attempts, 646 yards, 3.67 yards per carry, which isn't amazing. He's only got 4 rushing TDs. Receiving wise, he's had 56 targets, 44 receptions, 317 yards, 2 TDs. So he's having a good season, I think. But
no, again, on your box score stats, he's definitely leading.
But on the tape,
on the tape, and just when you look a bit closer into some of the numbers, I don't think he's had as good of a season as maybe people are trying to make out. But again, he's in a crappy situation, and so because of that, I think you've got to give him some props. For sure.
Pretty much.
Chase has looked good, hasn't he? Pre-season, he was. I was a little bit worried. I picked him in fantasy rookie draft, first round, so I was getting a bit worried pre-season, but he had a very good start to the year. He's been immense, and then the last couple of weeks, I think it's no coincidence that Burrow's gone off the ball as well in the last couple of weeks, and just offensively they've not looked as good. So hoping he can kind of bounce back. And I think you've also got to give some props to Mac Jones. People were all over the shop with him, and there were thoughts that he's not a first rounder. Too, he's the best quarterback outside of Lawrence. So there was just a big, massive spectrum on what people thought about him, and he has so far, by far, looked like the best quarterback, played the best. Doesn't seem to be kind of overawed by anything, just kind of playing what's in front of him, making the throws, the big throws, the important throws when he needs to. He's looked really good so far. I don't necessarily see how he improves that much in terms of his kind of skill set is what it is, but with the greatest respect to somebody like Brady, he never offered anything in the running game or whatever, I thought there was something there in terms of the way he played in comparison to Brady coming out, and I'm not surprised it's worked for them, and he's looked really good. So I think you've got to give a shout out to Mac Jones as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Right then, is there anything else in particular you kind of want to touch on in terms of kind of recapping the season or anything like that? Or should we just kind of finish off with a bit of a whinge?
Yeah, I think I'll get a few things off our chest, should we?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm super happy, so I'll just let you go.
You know full well what's coming. Refereeing decisions, specifically taunting, specifically poor Cassius Marsh for the Bears when he got flagged for taunting after sacking Ben Roethlisberger, third down to bring the punting to bring the punting unit onto the field. It affected that game. The Bears could have won that game if it wasn't for that. I have no idea how you can even defend it as being an acceptable thing. We don't want that in the NFL. Throwing a flag to markedly change the outcome of a game, all because he'd been on the Steelers practice squad. He'd finally gotten a gig. It was his first sack in 5 years or whatever. And he had the temerity to stand and look at the opposite sidelines. I mean, Jesus Christ, grow a pair of... I don't know if we can swear on this podcast, but honestly, I don't know how it's even defensible. Such a terrible, terrible call. The referee hip checked him as well. It was awful. And, he was in tears at the press conference almost. And I will hear nothing against it at all because I don't know what we're trying to do. The NFL needs to get a grip. The competition committee needs to get a grip. They need to just send something out to the teams. They said it was going to be a point of focus this year, but that is taking it to the nth degree. It's deciding the outcome of games, and it's ridiculous. Mike Tomlin, after the game, tried to defend it as being part of the competition committee. Mike, you're not telling me if TJ Watt had done the same thing, you'd have been saying that, would you? Hell, terrible, terrible call that's altering games, and it needs to stop.
That particular case is a very extreme example of what's been going on this season, and in general, I kind of agree with what you're saying. My only thought on it is though that it's been a point of emphasis for a reason, and that is because there's a lot of it that goes on, and it's not needed. It's like in English football where people are always giving the refs grief, and there was a big emphasis a few years ago, whatever, that the respect campaign and all of that, because people were up in the referees' faces and blah blah blah. I kind of think of it a little bit like that, in that you don't want young players seeing people haunting and all of this. And again, we can argue, or we can't really argue that was.
No, we can't argue.
That's the point, and that's the point that I agree with you. But I don't think the refs have been doing as bad a job as people have made out. That call was bad, but
I think there's a difference for me in. I totally agree with you. There needs to be respect. There needs to be respect for the refs. So if somebody's in a referee,
and the players and just your competition, you can go and lay out your player, right, and have a really good sack, tackle, whatever, but. Yeah. Don't be standing above him and flexing. And the thing is, there was a lot of that going on, and you're not telling me that the game benefits from that. It benefits from the big hit, and then go and celebrate with your own players. There's no need to stand above him,
No, you're right,
and all that kind of stuff. And I think that's what they're trying to get rid of. I just think there have been more examples than you would hope of them getting it. Of calling it too bad, or cutting it, not letting it go as much, and they've got that wrong, and it was a big example in a game that potentially could have changed the outcome. And yes, definitely, we don't want that to happen. We don't want refs being, making decisions that are going to change games. So,
thank you. I'll show up.
So maybe you did win that argument. Maybe, I don't know. Right, that kind of about wraps up the episode. So for those of you that listen and have been eagerly awaiting this episode, apologies for the break. We'll try and do another one before February or whatever. We'll try and do. We'll try and see if we can get back to some kind of form of regular of episodes. What I did want to say is that I think what we're going to try and do for the next episode, we had a suggestion from a friend of ours, Kutch. Shout out to Kutch for this suggestion. So I think this is what we're going to concentrate on in the next episode. Is he is interested in seeing kind of our take on what the draft would potentially look like now. So the 2021 draft that just happened in April, how would that look differently based on what we know through the first 10, 11 games of the season? So I think what we're going to do next time is we're going to do essentially a rerun of that draft, and we'll kind of take alternative picks, and we'll kind of just chat about what we would do if we were picking now as a GM of those teams. Would anything that we've seen so far kind of change our decision and change our decision. Would we pick anybody different or not? So I think it'll be an interesting little exercise. So that's probably what we're going to do in the next podcast. So any sort of thoughts, comments, Rob, before we kind of call it a day?
I mean, at this point, I think I prefer the pre-draft process to actually actual football, and certainly in fantasy, it's far more interesting trading players and throwing picks around the place than the actual game starting. It's nothing but a disappointment. So yeah, I'm very much looking forward to it. And shout out, coach, great suggestion.
Yeah, no, it's a good shout, isn't it? And it'll be an interesting thing to just kind of go through that. And I think with it being kind of us doing alternate picks, you'll obviously have your opinions. I'll maybe have mine, and it'll be good to do that exercise. So yeah, looking forward to it. So with that, we will conclude this episode, and we will see you again next time on the Fourth and Whinges podcast. Goodbye.